This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me, as usual, are Richard Hawes.
Hello, everybody.
And Stephen Lockridge.
Hello.
This is our first show back, so Happy New Year. We've got two action films to be looking at this evening. We're going to kick off with One More Shot. If you're an action fan, you know what that's a sequel to. Then we have a film from a new filmmaker, Lost Phoenix. Then we have a short shot, which is Friends Forever. And I'm going to wind up with a DTV throwback, The 13th Floor. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film then is One More Shot. Following the attack on the black site in Poland, Navy SEAL Jake Harris is ordered to escort terrorist suspect Amin Mansour to Washington, D.C. for interrogation. However, shortly after handing over Amin to a U.S. Senator and Homeland Security, a team of highly trained mercenaries attack, and Jake finds himself in the thick of it once more. So we kicked off 2023 with One Shot, I believe.
Oh, did we?
Sorry?
Did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, that was one of the first ones we covered.
Oh, how funny.
So now we got the sequel. It follows on more or less the same. One of the things I did like about this is it's not completely slavish to the format. In fact, we do start off with sort of camera footage from another team, this Homeland Security team going in, which is being edited together and stuff, and I think, okay, this is going to be a bit different, but then we get then it jumps into the format that we're sort of more familiar with this ongoing series. I'm going to go over to Steve first. I'm going to keep my powder dry. What did you think of One More Shot, Steve?
I really enjoyed this. I'll be honest, I don't remember us doing the first one.
Yeah, we did.
Maybe it was before I joined, because it was it says here 2021, the first one.
Was it that long ago? Maybe it was maybe it was the beginning of 2022 then we did.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I don't remember seeing it, I'll be honest. But, okay. I mean, I've literally just found out it was a sequel now.
Oh, crap.
I'll see, literally 20 seconds ago when you mentioned it. But, yeah, I mean, like I say, it starts off, you've got the little bit with the shipping container.
Yeah, the shipping containers, yeah.
And then, I'm thinking, all right, okay, so you got 5 minute tracking shot, not bad. And then it keeps going and going and going and going. I'm like, oh shit, no, they're really going for it here. And yeah, I was really impressed with it. It's done really, really well. I mean, to be fair, normally when you find out that it is like, like say like 1917, it's all supposed to be all one shot and stuff. You can normally spot the edit points.
Yeah.
With this, I couldn't really. I mean, I'm presuming there's maybe a couple, or I don't know if they did it all in one shot. I don't know. But...
yeah, I imagine there's a few, but like you, I mean, there's other films. I remember there was an Argentinian film called The Silent House, which was meant to be all one shot, and that was probably the first time I'd come across this particular format. This thing, and everyone in the audience, because it was at Fright Fest, is looking for those points, But this, I just didn't care. It wasn't a concern whether or not, I just went with it.
Yeah, I mean, I did. I mean, I was kind of looking, but I'll be honest, I didn't spot any. But I thought it was really impressive, really good. I'd say the only downside for me was when the body's revealed. Well, not so much the reveal, just the performance. I thought she was just too shrill and over the top, and didn't work for me. But everyone else I thought was great.
Yeah, I must say, I also love this. There is always that sort of worry with a sequel, whether or not especially when the format is so similar to the original. You are worried if they're going to just sort of be copying what they did before, but this is much more expansive, and even he gives himself, James Nunn gives himself more technical challenges. There's that whole bit inside the cars, which admittedly reminded me of the Raid 2 a little bit. But I thought, well, he's clearly watched the Raid 2 and thought, yeah, we can do this. We can do this whole sequence, or even
Children of Men to me.
Children of Men or Extraction 2 is another one. Sam Hargrave's, there's that sort of thing. The whole, the ambush for the cars and everything, I thought was absolutely great. There is a little bit, we got Michael J. White, who's sort of leading the, the mercenaries, and for a long time I'm thinking, is he just talking? Is this just a talking role for him or what? But eventually the film does manage to put, him and Scott in the same scene, and yes, fists and feet start flying. I really did enjoy that. The choreography was done by Tim Mann, who's one of my favorite choreographers. He did some of Scott Adkins' best work with Hitman and oh god, the Ninja 2, Shadow of a Tear, things like that. Are really good. If you ever see Tim Mann's name on the credits, you're going to be in for a good fight at the very least. Over to Rich. What did you make of One More Shot?
I thought you would say like James Nunn, they gives himself more technical challenges in this sequel. One of the interesting things I thought was how he went from a day shoot to a night shoot, or night shoots, I should say. So the first story was all set during the day, essentially, and this one is all taking place in sort of a lot of wee small hours or overnight kind of thing. So so aesthetically it looks very different to the first film because of that, and also you've got a very different environment. The first film was quite a it was
a black site, wasn't it?
Yeah, but a compound. There's lots of exterior stuff, and that they do the same kind of thing here, but there's much more space to work with, because here they show, although it's in both cases, both films are set outside of the UK, but were shot in the UK. So the first one was set in Poland, but I think it was shot in Suffolk. This one is set in Baltimore, I think, International Airport. Yeah. But it was actually shot at Stansted Airport, which made me really interested, because I always travel out of Stansted, so I've got a fondness for the place. And so you've got Scott Adkins and Aaron Toney having a scrap on the transit, which is a nice little throwback to one of Scott and James Nunn's first films together, which was Eliminators, where he had a fight on the cable car.
The cable car from Arsenal Stadium, yeah.
So that was it's the
West Ham.
Docklands.
Yeah,
it goes over to the O2 sort of way. It goes from Greenwich Peninsula over to the other side, whatever. I don't think it's near a football stadium, as far as I'm aware, but I might be wrong. I don't really know that part. But anyway, so Stansted Airport is a location. You can see, if you know what you look at, you can see little bits of Ryanair sort of stuff that they haven't quite covered up. But they've got this like kind of fake airport brand that's sort of put around the place to sort of make it look a bit different. The airport location is really great. I mean, fantastic. I mean, to me, it's amazing that an airport would want an action movie about terrorists at an airport filming there. So I think they really, they managed to get this great location, which is fantastic. Really adds some production value, adds some diversity, like you say, to the location. The film, because it's kind of the way it is in terms of what the plot is and the device that it's going for, does feel a lot more like 24 this time than the first one. The first one felt a bit more distinct. This one feels very much like 24, which isn't a bad thing, but it is kind of it was on my mind as a fan of 24. I was kind of it seemed like certain similarities. I thought really interesting to see Tom Berenger in this, which is great. He's really looking his age though, but it was great to have him in it. What I didn't realize was this is the third film, I think, that him and Michael Jai White have both been in. Okay. I know I don't think in this they share any scenes, but they've also got As Good as Dead and Cops and Robbers, which I've got to catch up on, which they both kind of headlined those two. By the way, just a side note, The Outlaw Johnny Black is available on digital release.
Oh, genius.
So if anybody wants to go and check that out. The fight scene on the transit was a highlight for me, but all the action, as you would expect with Scott Adkins, Tim Mann, James Nunn, they're a great crew. It's Michael Jai White, obviously. It's as you would expect. It delivers on all fronts. I don't think there's going to be anybody who's disappointed with what they've come up with. The concept was a risk when they made the first one, paid off massively. So that they've been able to get the funding to do this follow up. I'd be surprised if they try and do it a third time, because how many times is he going to want to do the same thing over and over again? But I think it was an interesting exercise. They haven't really done. James Nunn's done a couple of sequels. He did Marine 5, and then he did a sequel to that, both with The Miz, I think, which again I haven't seen because they've actually been really poorly distributed in the UK. But as well as directing, say, another sequel he directed, the first film he did with Scott Adkins was Green Street 3. So he's done sequels to other people's properties. He's not done a sequel to his own. So I think that's probably why he was more open to doing this. It gives him an opportunity to stretch his legs on his own concept for a change. As well as so he sort of dips in and out of other genres. Say he did the Shark Bait movie and stuff. But James Nunn is he's one of the leading lights in British action movie filmmaking. You've got Jesse Johnson out there as the veteran, and then you got James Nunn as kind of the sort of he's not even a young upstart anymore because he's been doing this for quite a few years now. But he's still quite young. I mean, it's only 10 years since he made his debut. Or 12 years, I should say. They say his first film was Tower Block in 2012. He's not actually been around that long, but he's amassed. I need to see it. I do need to see it. The first film of his I saw was Green Street 3, which I do really like.
I like that as well.
So he's with every film he's delivering. I'm really interested to see what he and hopefully he and Scott come up with next. I'd like to see them continue working together, basically. You never know. It might be an Accident Man 3 collaboration or something like that. That would be really cool. So I don't say this one's getting a lot higher, a lot of buzz on socials and that, people getting excited for it. It's getting a digital release in the United States. So over here it's on Sky. And you can say North America, you better get on VOD. So around the same time, they're both coming out. It should be everywhere, I think, within or at least in the main territories by the middle of this month.
I mean, you say that maybe the format is done, and maybe you wouldn't want to sort of carry it on, but he has deliberately left the story open ended.
Yes.
So it's quite possible.
There is that, yeah. Well, I mean, he's clearly got some more story he wants to tell. Would he change the concept and do something else?
Well, exactly.
Could he take it in another direction? Just want to say, I thought Alexis Knapp stole the movie for me in terms of her role. I won't give tell everyone what her role was and everything, but when you watch the film, you'll get to recognize, because I didn't know who she is. I couldn't even tell you a lot of other stuff. I know she's done some short films. There was one called Rosary that she did, which was okay and stuff, but I thought she really impressed me in this.
I mean, to be fair, she's done quite a lot, but I didn't enjoy her in this at all. I mean, I enjoyed in stuff like Pitch Perfect and Project X.
That was it. I saw she'd have been in the Pitch Perfect movies. Not a lot of action stuff I've seen on her. All of her stuff seems to do a lot of comedy and that. I didn't see anything sort of that indicated this kind of role. Because I was looking for what else can I see her in. Now that I've seen this, and really, there's not a lot. She's not an action person, but I thought she pulled it off. The bits that she had to do and what they were doing with their character. I thought personally, I was really on board with that.
Poor old Scott Adkins definitely gets put through the ringer on this, and there's a scene at the end on the plane, and he sort of turns to someone and he goes, "All right, give me a minute." And he looks, he's not acting by that point. I don't think he really is shattered.
Yeah.
Just like, just give us a minute. Oh, I need to sit down. It's like, yeah, don't blame you, mate. But I did like the thing he does right at the end. I thought that was a nice note as well. It said a lot about the character. So yeah, that was pretty cool. This is stellar, basically. Kicking off the year with a bit of James Nunn as Scott Adkins and Michael J. White. Look out for it. On that note, how are we going to score it, Steve?
I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, an 8 from me. And Rich?
I'll go an 8 as well.
Peer pressure. 3 8s for One More Shot. Go check it out. Our next film is Lost Phoenix. An amnesiac who is given the name Joe by his nurse awakens from a coma and tries to make a life for himself with the help of his new neighbor. However, while attending a Black Lives Matter rally, he encounters some covert operatives who are on a mission to instill fear and panic, and his muscle memory starts to return. Okay, so this is a very independent film, by which I mean really reasonably low budget, from a director called James Koosh. Apologies, James, if we're mispronouncing your name. I must admit, so there are some dodgy accents. Unfortunately, our lead in this, English is clearly not his first language, so there's a bit of an issue with delivery of certain lines. However, I mostly like this, I have to admit. There are some lines, some bits of dialogue. I suppose there's always an issue when you're writing, and you want to write clever dialogue for your henchmen or for your operatives. I think scriptwriters do struggle to come up with anything which actually sounds realistic. It's so we get a few, lots of buzzwords and sort of trying to capture zeitgeist and that sort of thing. It doesn't.
I like the bit where I did like the banter between some of them work. The thing where he says, "Oh, you look like one of the Expendables."
That's right.
I quite like those little bits.
Yeah. So some of it worked, but some of it does sort of seem a bit forced. So there was one good bit when the main bad guy sort of turns around to someone and goes, "Stop calling me sir," and then turns out the guy fucked up and he goes, "For God's sake, call me sir." Fuck, I have to call me sir. I thought that was really good. But there are some really, really decent pieces of not just action, but just sort of really good ways of sort of dealing with scenes. So our main guy, Joe, or Isaac, as we find out his name is, gets into a fight with this guy who's been posing as a detective. And the guy ends up getting killed by a sniper, and but it's the way he signals to the sniper not to kill him for a moment at least, and sort of holds his phone up, showing his phone number. I thought that was really, really clever, a really decent piece of sort of visual storytelling, and their relationship, the way that develops throughout the film, I thought was really good. And I do like the fact that you watch it. Things happen to her, and you think, "Oh well, that's her done then," and then she keeps sort of popping up, sort of later on. So yeah, I actually really did like this overall. Steve, how about you?
No, not a chance. I'm sorry. I thought it was weak and done. I thought the acting was awful, especially the main guy. I'm sorry. Like you said, obviously English was not his first language, but yeah, he was terrible. And I didn't like the action. I'll be honest. I didn't think it was done very well. And to me, it was obviously shot during COVID, because every time he had a fight scene,
it puts a mask on, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I was wondering about the mask thing. I thought that was just so they could easily, excuse me, I thought that was just so they could easily switch in a stunt double or something. But yeah, you're right. That's COVID. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
And I didn't really like the Black Lives Matter thing with it. It just seemed not pointless, but why? I don't know what, maybe because of the time period and what was going on when they made it. Having it as a Black Lives Matter riot didn't add anything to it to me. It was just there for, oh, look at us, aren't we good? And I don't know, it just seemed very, I mean, it's something we've seen a million times before. Amnesiac, like the first Bourne film, completely rip off of that. And I'm not saying that it's a classic story, but it's been done to death, and I just thought it was very, very underwhelming, the whole thing. Also, as well, I mean, I was reading the stuff on IMDb, and apparently the sniper was originally played by a different woman.
All right.
Who had to drop out because she couldn't handle it, or something. That's what it says. Now, looking at it, it is quite obvious. And I know they're not going to share a lot of things because of she is a sniper, but it just seems like the grading different on the film and stuff like that. It just didn't fit together as far as I'm concerned.
I must admit, I didn't even notice that. I didn't even notice. So yeah, for me personally, I thought they did sort of manage to meld the two sides quite well. But okay. And Rich, what did you make of Lost Phoenix?
I think it is. I mean, yeah, it is kind of Bourne Identity variation. I tell you what came to mind when I started watching it was that Blackout film that we watched just before Christmas, which was the Bobby Samuels movie. Which kind of the similar idea is that he's kind of similar. He's kind of was he amnesiac in that? It was something like that. He was kind of in a cycle, in a loop of that. So there was other stuff going on, but essentially the principle was he sort of wakes up. So he's in this situation. People are coming after him, and there's fight scenes and stuff. But that film had no real,
narrative
structure and stuff. It just wasn't really gelling. I thought this had a lot more story and stuff actually working for it. I thought I was very intrigued by the lead because he isn't who you expect. I mean, he's as you say. I think I can't remember whether they show a Malaysian passport or something, but I think later on they say he's Haitian. So I presume in real life he's Haitian. And how many American-made action films can you think of with a Haitian lead? I thought so that made it stand out. And this guy's got no other credits on his IMDb. So what he does the rest of the time, I'm not sure. I found a Twitter account that suggested he's a chef. I don't know, but I thought all things being considered, he was quite well. He's definitely a charismatic looking guy. I thought, some of the dialogue maybe, like you say, doesn't flow as well, but I thought, in the action stuff and that he was doing all right. So I was quite intrigued. And although I think it was an interesting bit of casting, I'd like to know the genesis of that, why they decided where he came from. Because I've watched a few of James Cooch's shorts, and he's not like one of his familiar players. Like, for example, David Norton, who plays the bad guy in this.
Yeah,
he's worked with him a few times on a bit. What's funny about him is I've been watching. There's a Christian writer called Lee Strobel, and I was watching a documentary about him and stuff. And to me, they just look very similar. So he's got this kind of, because he's an older gentleman. This guy, it's like and again, you see certain people, and you don't expect them to be able to start busting out certain moves and whatever. And no, this guy's a really,
it's a really good sword fighter at the end, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a proper, martial artist, very experienced. Lots of, you can see in the other shorts that he's done different kinds of action, aikido and stuff. So when you first meet him, he's just sitting behind the computer doing the chat stuff, because like you say, I think it was all shot during COVID, so they've done a lot of shooting people in individual locations and then linking them up by phones and stuff by virtue of the situation. But when they do come face to face, he doesn't have somebody come in and do the fighting for him. He does the fight himself, which I thought was really cool. So I really liked him. I thought he was quite interesting again. Yeah, the mask thing, you've already mentioned it. That he's got, Wandral, who is the lead, Joe. He suddenly puts on he has like these conversations, and then will suddenly put on a mask when they're fighting. He hasn't had it on while they were talking.
But there's distance between them, isn't there? When he's talking, they're not right in his face. So. Yeah, I was intrigued.
They don't really explain that very well. I know it's set during. They do explain that it is set during the pandemic. But all I'm thinking is, okay, you're in a life or death situation, anyway. Are you really going to take a second to put on a mask when you're just about to have a fight or whatever? I don't know. It was all very sudden. If it was like, right, stand back a minute, get ready, put the mask on, kind of thing. But it's not like it's like literally leaping into action, suddenly wearing a mask. There was one where I went back and I did see, they actually showed him pick it up in his hand and sort of bring it towards his face. And so there was an effort to show the transition. But so I understand the sort of real world reason, but I thought in the film it just sort of, although the COVID thing is presented in the film, it didn't quite flow that, in this kind of situation you would suddenly put the mask on. But that's a minor quibble. The mask actually looks like cool. It's it's in the poster and stuff. He's wearing it and stuff. So I like the villain. I thought not perfect, but the guy in the lead was interesting. The COVID stuff, and I think the Black Lives Matter thing is. I don't think they explicitly state it. I might be wrong. I know that when you see them marching, when you see them marching, you do see some signs and stuff. But I think it's more representing a. I might be misunderstanding it, but it seemed like it was not, you didn't have to notice that. It was kind of more of a case of there's an uprising of thing, and it just happened to be they used some Black Lives Matter footage, or it is intangibly linked to it. I'm not 100% sure, but that's how I took it. It was just kind of
I suppose that was what, if the film is set in sort of, 2020.
2020,
and so I suppose that was what people were most rallying about and protesting about at the time. So, I guess that's why it sort of like has that sort of tag to it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a film set at a very particular time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, even if it wasn't explicit, you can certainly infer what it is that's going on. One of the other things was I thought some scenes looked really well shot and other scenes not so well shot. But I think in that way, this is a film that had a long production. It started out as a short, which I haven't seen, so I don't know which scenes were actually from the original short, or they might have even reshot that footage. I don't know. But there's some scenes where it's even when you're cutting between the two, one looks quite a bit sort of less polished, a bit grainy, and some of the other stuff looks like really nice and like, for example, the stuff. Yeah, the stuff with the bad guy on the when he's looking at his computer or whatever. That's quite. It's got like a slick look to it, and there's quite a few other scenes that have got that kind of similar look. James himself was the cinematographer as well. I think he had somebody else helping out on a few bits. But I mean, this was one of those films where the director was wearing lots of hats. It's like I don't know if you remember a film a long time ago we called The Patriot. Way back when we started the show, it was like this guy was essentially like a one-man band. It was like a terrorism in a city kind of thing, and he basically pulled it all together himself. And it's that kind of thing. It's like it's a Robert Rodriguez kind of approach of just you've got to do everything. You've got to wear many hats when you try and do something like this. What's the other one? There was another character in it. Which one was the character in it who looked? I was seeing one of the characters, and I can't remember which one it was. It reminded me of Master Ken. and I can't remember which one it was, but there was a guy called it might have been the Tom Strong character. I can't remember, but he's a yeah. There's this guy who's his name. I don't think it's his real name, but he's called Tom Strong. Again, he doesn't have any other credits, but you know him when you see him. He's the guy with the massive arms and stuff. He's got the hugest arms ever. So he's like one of the henchmen. So you got the one with the arms and you got the one with the dreadlocks, and I thought I quite like some of their stuff. They try to do
it grew on me. Some of it was a bit grating to begin with, and I thought, because we've come across this sort of stuff before where they try to give clever dialogue to these sort of characters. It all stems from bloody Jules and Vincent in Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. So some of it works. As you say, some of the references I thought were quite good.
Yeah, I think all things. This is a film that's been pulled together with limited resources, and not, from what I can tell, a not massively experienced cast or crew. I say, apart from James Cooch has been making short films for a very long time, and I would say I actually do recommend checking out some of those because, and I do think actually he's got some of his best stuff is comedic. Which is one thing this film isn't really. There's a couple of comedic moments in there, I guess, but he's done some nice shorts. There was one called Video Sniper, which actually James starred in. He played sort of the lead role, and that's a fun little kind of sketch short. There's another one called Attack the Dojo, which David Norton was in. So do check out some of the stuff on his YouTube channel. I would say, in terms of coming out of that kind of micro budget indie sphere, say in the same kind of world as like Bobby Samuels. I won't say the action is as good as what like Bobby Samuels. I mean, this is the guy with Hong Kong experience and stuff. His action scenes are better, but James is also very, clearly, he does a lot. He's choreographs the fights, and I think he does a really good job with that. I did like the action in this. I didn't think I wanted a bit more. Some of the fights are a bit brief, but these things take a long time, and if you're on limited resources, you can't maybe necessarily do as much as you perhaps might want to. But I thought when the action kicked in, it was pretty decent. And I thought it looked quite polished for say a film that's working with coming out of that this isn't a Randall Emmett kind of Bruce Willis-y sort of DCV movie. This is at the opposite end of the spectrum, and I think it holds its own reasonably well in that sort of action sphere.
The thing is, exactly. I mean, we've seen films with a much larger budget, things like Pursuit and Fortress, Sniper's Eye, and all that sort of crap. All those Bruce Willis ones, which cost, at least £1 million. And then you got this, which is made with limited resources in COVID as well. So it's as if they thought, well, what other challenges can we throw at ourselves? Funny enough, I watched another film this week called Blank. Which is another film filmed during COVID with a limited cast, limited setting, and all the rest of it. And again, looks absolutely superb. And I think all of the filmmakers who are sort of like plying their trade during that period are to be commended for finding ways to work and to actually put films together. We've seen some crap. This isn't crap as far as I'm concerned. Yes, the story is very familiar, but it comes up with some interesting twists to the familiar beats. For example, both Isaac and Layla, who's the sniper, they both kind of come to the same conclusion as far as their vendetta is concerned. But both sort of. There's a couple of moments when Isaac, could kill somebody, but sort of holds off at the last minute, and which again quite surprising. but then there's other times when he lets loose. There's a sword fight. He has a sword fight with one guy who's one of the main henchmen, and then at the last minute he sort of picks up a gun and shoots the guy, which I thought was really cool as well. That did remind me of the Expendables. Funny enough, I really like this. If this is what James Coach can do with limited resources in COVID, I'm really excited to see what he can do. Now, and hopefully with with more to his disposal. On that note, Steve, how are you going to score it?
I'm going at 5.
Okay, that's actually higher than I was expecting from you, mate. Consider your comments. Rich?
I'm going to give it a 6.
Okay, yep, I think it is a very high 6. It's not quite 7. It needs a bit more polish, but it is. I found myself watching this from start to finish without needing to skip scenes. I mean, there's been loads of films where I've gone, this is taking too long. Skip to the next scene. But I stuck with this. I thought it was great. It's unpolished, but it's worth checking out. So that is a 5 and 2 6s for Lost Phoenix. Go check it out. Our short shot this week is Friends Forever. In 1987, a group of teenagers throw a rager in an abandoned house where the previous occupants had met a horrible end 30 years previously. This starts off great. Really bizarrely, this sort of silent sequence in black and white, where this massacre happens. I was kind of reminded of like Children of the Corn kind of thing.
Yeah.
Going on there. Because it's just like really perplexing. Like, why is this happening? Something to do with the corn and shit. But very, very intriguing opener. And then, it jumps forward to 30 years. So we're in 1987. And these kids turn up to throw a party. And I was a bit worried at first because it's like 4 of them. I'm thinking, really, that's a party? But then it turns out, oh no, they're just there to set it up, and everyone else is going to come along. And then, of course, things start to happen. Rich, you are our curator of shorts. How did you come across this one, and what do you think of it?
Well, actually, I didn't curate this one. You did.
No?
Because this came via actor Timothy J. Cox,
who
forwarded this on for us to take a look at. He appears as the father in the opening prologue. So this was one going in that I hadn't seen, and the thing with this is it's kind of like a lot of the films. Well, it's kind of like a lot of films we've seen in general, but also a lot of stuff we've also watched recently. But it's like a truncated form, so it's essentially kind of a slasher movie kind of thing, but with it in 20 minutes. So all the prerequisite kind of bits are there. It's like, something bad happened, they go into a house, and it's teenagers, there's going to be a party, and then people are going to die, and there's a supernatural stuff going on and whatever. And I just thought the problem was, in part, it's homage, which I get. I can, to me, it felt, like you say, Children of the Corn was there. I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre's in there, in terms of the sort of isolatedness, the rural sort of location, and the old house gave me that vibe, and also, sort of general slasher movie party stuff. But it didn't kind of bring its own. It didn't bring its own identity enough for me, so therefore I didn't get on with it that well. I thought it's fine, it's okay. I would just like to see a little bit more of its own individual sort of personality and twist on the genre. So we watched the She Came from the Woods short. We watched the feature film based on the short, and you could see that this is like a proof of concept or something for a bigger story, but or just maybe it was just always intended to just be this one thing, but it's still just another kind of slasher story. And even people like the Now, remind me who's the collective of female filmmakers. They do the really sort of day glow kind of stuff.
Oh.
They did a slasher movie, Femmes,
Monstrous Femmes.
Monstrous Femmes. So you look at something like what they've done. They do a similar kind of thing. They've done a slasher movie-ish kind of one, but they put all this, they've got all this kind of like color and stuff that they throw into. It's a real. It really paints itself as like something distinctive. And then this one, it's kind of, if you like slasher movies and stuff, and you want like a 20-minute version of one, that kind of thing with a little bit of a twist and whatever, I think it's fine. There's a little bit of production value issues with some muffled dialogue and stuff, some audio recording, some audio mix issues and stuff. But there's some adventure. Some of the visual camera work and that gets a little bit adventurous at times, especially at the party. But apart from that, it's not something I'd massively recommend, to be fair.
Yeah. Steve, what do you make of Friends Forever?
Yeah, I can't agree with Rich, really. It's very, very derivative of lots and lots of other films. Like you're saying about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, at the beginning, even at the end, she sits them all around the table and, you've got that long shot going down the table, all the bodies sat around it. Just remind me of that straight away. And yeah, I mean, I know it sounds awful, but it was the party scene that kind of let it down for me.
They got loads of extras. I will give them that. They made it an actual party. Yeah. It wasn't like some of these parties where it's like 5 or 6 people. So they did pack the house, which was very good. They did manage to make it look like a real party.
But it's one of them where it's so cringy. You can tell there's no music playing. They put the music in afterwards. Put the music in or whatever, and it just looks embarrassing. I don't know why. It was cringeworthy, the party. And then I don't think it explained the twist as much. There's no recollection of why she's suddenly possessed by this spirit
or what it was all about, with the corn and stuff. I think you can infer, but I think like you, I would have liked a bit more of an explanation of what was actually.
Yeah, a bit more clarification, just of what was actually going on. But
because we didn't spend that much time with the family, like you say at the beginning, Mike was saying at the beginning, with the setup, it's all very sort of silent and everything seems fine, and then then it starts kicking off, which is very atmospheric. I'll give it that. It's it wasn't. Again, maybe that's something they want to flesh out in like a longer version or something. I'm not sure. But to be fair, I'm not really worried about seeing a longer version of this myself. No. And I do really like slasher movies and stuff, but I think there's got to be something distinctive that's going to make this stand out. Especially when there've been so many slasher movie homages and stuff recently, like the Final Summer and stuff that we've seen, which have all struggled to sort of put their own stamp on things. It's I'm sorry, I've stepped back in. Sorry, Steve.
I mean, there's nothing unique about it. It's everything we've seen before. Even the performances aren't great as well. Like the girl at the end when she starts spouting, all the shit and that, and it's just like, it's just not quite good enough, if you know what I mean. The performances just aren't there. And if they had more money and they were the mates who were turning up to do it, I don't know, maybe it could have been a bit better. But like you say, there's nothing unique. It's too derivative, and it's fine. It's nothing special at all.
It's nothing special, but at the same time, it doesn't do itself. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it embarrasses itself too much. It's bland, yes, but it's not necessarily a stinker as such.
I thought it would say in general it's fine. I didn't have anything against the cast. I thought
we're just jaded film reviewers who've seen too much shit, and we got too much. We compare it to so much stuff. It's you know, the cast is obviously amateur. You know, there's the effects. Sometimes those throat slashings look pretty decent. Sometimes they look not so good.
Yeah.
You know, a bit more care and attention. You know, if they had more time, a bit more sort of post-production work would have helped. A bit more sort of logic to some of the story. I mean, basically, we're led to believe that this house has been abandoned for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
And they
where's
come
the
in,
dust? Okay, where's the dust? This was annoying me when I was watching it.
There's still food on
I'll
the
be fair.
table.
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
that I
flies
could not
and
figure that out. That
cockroaches
made
and all
no
that.
sense
You
to
know,
me.
yeah, all that sort of stuff. You know, the house is, you know, well, I won't say pristine because it wasn't, but you know, it was certainly not disused for 30 years.
It's shit, yeah.
Basically, so you know,
Yeah,
it's stuff like that
there
that
was
sort of
something
take you
that
out
mad
of the
up, and
moment.
it took me out of the film. Yeah.
It does. It takes you out of the moment, basically, when you see stuff like that. But yeah, it's not great, but it's at the same time and not exactly terrible. It needs work, needs polish. It needs a bit of a rethink. But at the end of the day, this is from a group called Alysm. How do you pronounce that? ALYSM Films.
That's Asylum, isn't it?
Alysm or something. But anyway, they've got a couple of things on there. They've got another horror film, a couple of other horror films on there, which may be worth checking out. But there you go. We don't score the shorts, but we do recommend you check them out. This is currently unlisted, but once it becomes available, we will post a link on our Twitter page. So check it out when it's available. Our DTV throwback this week is The 13th Floor. A computer scientist running a virtual reality simulation of 1937 becomes the primary suspect when his colleague and mentor is murdered. Now, like you, Rich, and I'm sure you, Steve, we've seen this film knocking around the video shop.
Yeah, I remember the trailer.
Well, I never saw the trailer either, but I remember, you know, the video store guy going, "Oh yeah, 13th Floor, you might want to check that out. It looks, you know, it's really good." And I looked at the cover and I thought, that looks like a piece of shit. I'm not, and unfortunately, whoever did that cover, you know, that artwork, really did the film a disservice.
I like the cover. I thought the cover's really good. Yeah.
Well, how come you've never watched this film before, Rich?
I have. It's one of my favourites.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Okay, I had never seen this before. I was aware of it. You know, it's one of those films, kind of like the Philadelphia Experiment. It's one of those films. You know, I remember coming out and all the rest of it, but never actually getting around to seeing. This is superb. This
Fantastic.
That's
what I want to hear.
Good. I couldn't believe that I hadn't seen this before. The only thing that really dates it is the voiceover of the computer. Everything else, you know, is pretty much timeless. You know, apart from the lack of mobile phones and shit. You know, the cast is superb. Vincent D'Onofrio in this is just great. You know, in his sort of dual performance, I thought he was great. Dennis Haysbert, absolutely superb as well. And then of course we got Craig Bierko as our main guy. Yeah, the story was superb. You know, the mystery of it. I love those sort of private detective kind of things, and setting it, you know, part of it in 1937, I thought worked really well. Yeah, this just rocked for me from start to finish.
I just want to say, I want us to go into spoilers on this. Mm-hmm. So if anybody hasn't seen it,
stop
watch
listening
the film first. Because I'm really interested to see what you guys think about some of the twists and turns that the story takes. But I'll hand it back to you now.
Yeah. So, Steve, your initial thoughts on this? What did you think of it? Had you seen it before?
No, I remember the trailer. I remember it coming out, but yeah, it's one of them I'd never really watched. But I think it just kind of got lost in after the Matrix and stuff like that. Really,
possibly, yeah.
You know,
well, the thing was, this and the Matrix were at the same time. It was the same year. This got released like a few weeks later. They were basically in production at the same time, and because they have an aspect that's very similar, which we'll get into. The Matrix was just like wildfire, and basically the 13th floor got completely buried by it.
Yeah,
because it's much lower key kind of story. You know, it's just it couldn't really sort of hold its own with it, and thematically, you know, the people were just dismissive of it. I think because of because everyone was loving the Matrix. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you two, but it is a decent film. It's not terrible, or some decent twists in that. But I just wasn't too gripped by it, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say, like I say, it wasn't awful. It was enjoyable, but it didn't grab me as much as I thought it would. To be fair, I mean, there's certain bits that I really enjoyed, but it's just a little bit flat for me.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, Rich, what do you want to talk about?
Oh well. So this was I was quite interested in this when it came out, and I really liked it. It was one of my favorites. Watched it quite a few times. Hadn't watched it for a very long time though, so I was wondering if it would hold up, especially after all this time. Now, what's funny is you get to a certain point in the story, and it says it's 2024, which I thought was just what a weird coincidence that is.
That is a weird coincidence.
But the film itself, I think it really stands up. Very, very well produced, very polished. This comes from Roland Emmerich's Centropolis company, so it's got, but it's very much not like a typical Roland Emmerich movie. It was directed by Joseph Rusnak, who I'm not sure exactly on. I can't remember if he came out of like cinematography or special effects, but this was like his debut, and because it wasn't a hit. Basically, it didn't do anything for anyone's career. So Joseph Rusnak didn't really direct, I don't think, anything for a while.
Back to Germany, I think, didn't
he? He did a DTV movie called, I think he did The Contractor with Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, which we covered
a few years later, which was,
and
nothing like this. Oh, did he do Art of War 2 as well? Yeah, so very sort of, he just didn't have the budget to play with. So these are very sort of cheaply shot kind of looking film. This is lavish, it's got a fantastic look to it. Cinematography is excellent. Craig Bierko and Gretchen Mol are two of the main characters. Again, this was supposed to be kind of like their breakout kind of movie. And Craig Bierko, it just didn't really happen for him. So he's had a very solid career, and so has she in the years since. Gretchen Mol actually did some other leading roles, like I think it was like the Notorious Betty Page or something like that, and which I actually saw in the cinema. But the Craig Bierko was. I think he does a lot of supporting roles and stuff, as far as I can tell. But he's really good in this. I think he's. This is a film of. It's kind of a film of a different time, and I think that's kind of sits what it's trying to do. Is it's kind of old-fashioned in many ways. It's not action. There's not a lot of action in it at all. Not only have you got the sort of the 1930s classics sort of stuff, but that kind of aesthetic kind of carries itself into the rest of the film as well. So it's kind of low key. A lot of it's low key. I mean, even so the idea is Craig Bierko's characters working at this tech company, and they've created this computer system and everything. Well, you only see one guy apart from Craig Bierko actually working there, and that's Vincent D'Onofrio. So it's like you think, is it supposed to have entirely been created to this one guy? Because if it was done now, it'd be like like Free Guy or something. You'd have scenes where there are dozens and dozens of people, or even hundreds, sitting at computers or whatever to try and create all these virtual worlds and stuff. But anyway, in this movie, that's kind of the way it's. So there's a modest budget to it, but sort of the 1930s scenes and stuff all look really good. One of the interesting things on the old DVD was the special effects, because it's kind of not a special effectsy movie, but you go into the behind the scenes and it's like, well, all of that in the stuff used to create the 1930s sort of setting and the things in the background and stuff is all visual effects, and so it was very.
It's the only way they could do it. Otherwise, it cost them a fortune.
Well, it's a lot of. So there's a lot of visual effects in it. It's just sort of not flashy, which is quite nice. So all the people playing dual roles are great. I mean, Armin Mueller-Stahl is fantastic. He's got this very sort of low key kind of delivery and stuff, low key character, and the sort of amusement of his character. Now, going back and watching it after all these years, one thing I hadn't really picked up, one thing I really noticed about it this time is whether it's intentional or not. There's a little bit of Back to the Future in this, because the whole, like in Back to the Future, Doc Brown is shot, and Marty travels back in time, and then he meets Doc Brown again. Well, that kind of happens in this. Armin Mueller-Stahl's character is killed, which is kind of the inciting event for the murder mystery kind of thing. He sort of travels back in time because he goes into the computer and he goes back to the 1930s and meets up with the other guy and stuff. And there's also
because they've modelled some of the characters in their simulation on themselves, haven't they?
Yes, and that's the whole Matrix thing. Is they kind of got all these same kind of characters. They look like themselves and whatever. And so when Craig Becker goes back, he goes into a guy who looks like him. The other thing about Back to the Future is, you remember that scene in Back to the Future where Michael J. Fox walks into the square of the town, and he's just looking around, and he's just amazed at what he sees, and there's that wonder. You get that with this. I mean, his character, when he gets there, and he can't believe it. It's like amazing. I mean, it's not time travel, but it is in a way, because he's in the computer simulation. It's a time travel kind of thing. So I really like that. I thought, and whether it was intentional or not, I was picking up on those vibes and stuff. Maybe that's one of the reasons I like it, because I love Back to the Future. Yeah. So you got the computer system kind of stuff, and I say Gretchen Mol. She's a very classic kind of looking actress. She appears in the contemporary set scenes, and even in those scenes, she looks like she's from the 50s or something.
Yes, she looks like a Femme Fatale sort of thing.
Yeah, she's got that very sort of classic kind of classic film sort of look to her. He has as well. So I think that works quite nicely. And Vincent D'Onofrio, he's got the more complex kind of job of being two characters who are quite different in their personalities, whereas the others are quite close for the most part.
Now, here's the thing. We mentioned this came out more or less the same time as The Matrix.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure The Matrix nabbed a few ideas from this, or the sequels nabbed a few ideas from this.
Well, the thing is, I'll just step in and say that this is based on a novel called Simulacrum 3, which was previously filmed in like the mid 70s in Germany as like a TV miniseries, and it's a very World on a Wire it was called, and it's very well regarded as like something in the line of like a Stanley Kubrick kind of thing. So it's quite likely that the source, either that the source novel or the German production, was itself an influence on the Matrix.
It's the way that we get characters, the simulated characters coming into the real world.
Yes, which happens in Matrix. 2 and
3, basically. I think.
Yeah. Because I was thinking the same thing. It's like maybe that's come in from there. It's it's a coincidence thing. But if it was in the source material, then that would make sense that they would have actually been able to nab that, unless they watched the film and said, "Oh, actually, let's crib it from
that's
there."
That's a good idea.
But the whole crawling up, something crawled up and killed its maker.
It's like, well, we've already fucked over this film already. Why not kick it to the curb, kick it while it's down, and nick some ideas from it? I'm sure that's not what happened really. Production values are superb from this. Even the actual sort of computer simulation bit, I thought worked really well. The machine that he goes into to be downloaded. Which
is basically a box with a light.
Oh yeah, exactly.
A green light. That's all it is.
To me, that's the thing that dated it slightly, is the green lights.
It's not so much the green lights; it's the voiceover telling you everything that's happening. So that thing really annoyed me. But it gets a lot of tension out of the film. There's that bit where he goes, he goes into the machine alone and he forgets to set the timer because he's supposed to only be in there for a maximum of 2 hours, and he basically forgets to set his video clock, and
which again kind of reminded me, like there's something a bit like that in Back to the Future, where when they're trying to travel through and the clock's malfunctioning and stuff.
Also, Bill and Ted. Yeah. Hey Ted, don't forget to set your watch. But yeah, no, I loved it. I thought Vincent D'Onofrio was great. You know, the idea of these, you know, these simulations becoming aware that they're simulations, and even Dennis Haysbert's character at the end, you know, because Gretchen told him basically, or no, I think he figures it out for himself, doesn't he? Because he tracks her down when she's not being inhabited by her future self.
Yes.
And
see, this is where I get into the twist territory here.
Yeah.
Of,
Well, that's when it clicked for me, or kind of, because it's like, well, yeah, because if basically somebody is jumping into her body.
Yes.
Yeah, bit of quantum leap as well, isn't there? Really?
Exactly. I wrote down quantum leap as well.
Yeah. So you're thinking, well, obviously, to somebody, this, you know, the present is the past, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And his head's starting to spin at this point. So going, oh right, okay, it's really cool.
So how did you? Because there's some going back and watching it again. There's lots of little clues as you're watching it, and some of them, I think, some people could be quite, you know, might be really savvy and go, oh yeah, I know exactly what's happening here, quite before it's like revealed. So I was just wondering, did you sort of get carried away with the story and not realize that was happening, or, you know, did you?
I didn't realize until Dennis Haysbert sort of questioning the identity of Gretchen Moll's character.
Yeah,
you say, well, no one's ever heard of her. She doesn't exist, sort of thing. He doesn't have a daughter, you know, daughter. It's at that point, and yeah, the fact that Douglas, you know, he keeps waking up in weird places.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Yeah, it was definitely sort of something weird going on, but even he's starting to realize then that, you know, possibly he's, you know, he's being used as much as he's using his, you know, his 1930s self, as it were. But I didn't really sort of figure it until Vincent D'Onofrio tells him what the contents of the letter.
Yes.
You know, that's
what about you, Steve?
No, I'll be honest. I didn't see that one. I didn't see it coming in this one. Right. Normally, I can see a twist coming a mile off, but this one, no.
But I think that's really. I think that speaks to how well the film does it. That you know, it does put this stuff right there in front. So there's a couple of like, I think there's 2 occasions where they're talking about the simulation in 1937, and they say they're as real as you and me. And they're like literally putting it right out there in front of you. And also, I don't know if now I'm not a Blade Runner fan, so I wouldn't have picked up on it. But the house that Douglas Hall lives in, which I did notice because it's very distinctive architecturally. I thought it wasn't real, but it's a real house. But it's the house that Deckard lives in Blade Runner, which I think is another sort of subtle indicator of what they're trying to do with the character. So it's a little nod to Blade Runner, but also to the unreality of who the character thinks they are, and what the world is actually, what their world actually is. Yeah. So so I like the twist and stuff. I think that works really nicely. Interestingly, in the trailer, there's like when we get to the end of the film, there's a bit where we go into the future, like was previously mentioned, 2024, and in the trailer, it's like there's all we see really is a big sort of bleak, like concrete block kind of room kind of thing, and he goes up and he looks out a window. It's in the trailer, but in the film, I don't know if that was the original ending and then they reshot it, because the one at the end of this, it's like waking up in a nice house and stuff, and they look out over the futuristic city, which could be like, you know, okay, it's not futuristic America, but it could be Singapore, you know, something like that.
I got the impression I think it was meant to be LA after LA has sort of fallen into the sea.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's kind of where they're going with it.
But I don't think it looked, you know, they didn't put like flying ships and stuff all over the place and stuff. The buildings look quite futuristic, but apart from that, it was very sensible, I think, about its approach to trying to show the future at that time. You know, it doesn't go for that because Back to the Future 2 goes into the future, which is basically the same kind of time, isn't it? I think I recall, unless I'm wrong. When was it? Unless it was earlier than that, Back to the Future 2. 2015, So
1985 to 2015,
So they could have done the flying cars thing and all that sort of thing, and they don't really, which I quite like. But yeah, I think all that stuff with the kind of happy ending stuff that happens. I dig all that. I like it. I think it's quite I like the film, but the sort of twist it takes with Craig Beer, because that's the thing. Douglas Hall kind of becomes a secondary character at the end. He kind of gets pushed out, and the other characters come to the forefront, which I understand why they had to do that, but it doesn't. That's one of the sort of things that I think is slightly weaker about it, because we're with him so far along, the whole rest of the film. Then we kind of have to, because they want to shift him to be like the villain basically for the ending. We have to sort of focus more. Gretchen Mol has to step up to the plate and stuff, and I think she does the best. I think she does well. But that's sort of narratively, that's just sort of it. But I love it. I'd say I think it's a fantastic film. Loads of films around the 90s were doing all this sort of stuff. Free Jack,
Free Jack.
There's a Dark City is another one. You can watch this in Dark City. This is
Dark
a film
City.
that sits between Dark City and The Matrix.
Yeah,
they all touch on very similar themes and styles. I mean, The Matrix is as close to Dark City as this is close to Matrix. They're so they're playing with the same ideas all around the same time. Dark City was the year before, in 1998. Free Guy, I mean, Truman Show was the Truman Show the 90s as well?
Yeah,
I think it was.
Late 90s.
So a lot of films, and then obviously more recently stuff like Free Guy have been doing this sort of stuff. So it's a great story, but different to all those others because it's so much of a kind of a grounded sort of investigative. It's that kind of, he's been accused of murder, he's got to prove his innocence kind of story.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again, they were making loads of those in the 90s, Mission Impossible and everything. But this is so, not action driven. It's character driven. It's slowly paced. But it's only about an hour and a half long. It's a good watch, I would say. I'd say I love this, and I would love anybody else who hasn't seen it to go and check it out. Oh, and Sherry Appleby and Alison Lohman have very small roles in it, if you remember those. I was looking up Alison Lohman, and she actually did a TV series with Craig Beerco a few years ago called Unreal, coincidentally. I don't know if because they don't really, in this, she's got such a tiny role. And then, like 15 years later, they were working together on another show. I thought that was quite interesting. No, sorry, Sherry Appleby, not Alison Lohman. Sherry Appleby is the one who did the show Unreal, and Alison Lohman has a very like blink and you'll miss a appearance. Selfless, that's another film. Have you ever seen that one, the Ryan Reynolds one?
I don't think so.
That's like Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley swap bodies or something like that.
I remember it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah. Again, now lots of films very interesting on the thing.
Now, Craig Beerco.
From The Long Kiss Goodnight. That's
where I remember him from, exactly. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, he's the baddie in that. The main bad guy.
Yeah, he's like isn't he like the henchman? Or is he the main guy?
He's basically the main guy, yeah.
I don't really remember that, because I never really loved The Long Kiss Goodnight. It never really clicked with me, that one.
No, I love that one. Great.
I keep meaning to watch it again.
Yeah, I used to have it on Laserdisc.
Because I love Shane Black, so I don't know why it didn't kind of gel with me, that one. But it's like, that was one of his kind of main roles a couple of years before this one, like 3 or 4 years before this one.
But this is a genuine find if you've not seen it before. For me personally, it's down to that stupid cover. I think it just didn't entice me at all. But there you go. This is currently available to rent on Amazon Prime in the UK. I'm sure it's on Hulu or somewhere in the States, I'm sure. And it's free to people with Prime Video at the moment as well. Cool. Yeah. So we highly recommend you go check this one out. You may side with Steve and say it's not all that, but then again, you might be thinking.
No. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I did enjoy it. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's just not quite as good as you think it is. I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I really did enjoy this. So there you go. We don't score the throwbacks. We just recommend you go find them and check them out. And that is the end of this week's show. So thank you very much to Rich and Steve for joining me in this very, very cold January. Thankfully, we got Scott Adkins and Michael J. White and James Nunn to warm us up.
I know that sounds really bad, actually. But... Oh, it's so bad trying to ad lib, really is. Anyway, don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter at the DTV Digest and at the Short Shots, the DTV Short Shots, where we've got a whole library of links to some excellent shorts. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.